And we're back live. So this is a bit of a different session. We've got our first discussion panel of this event. With me are Viv and Simon, who are going to be talking about going solo, the realities of going freelance in the ID world. As I kind of touched on at the end of the last session, the reality does not always mirror some of the golden promises that get thrown around the industry, or the ideas some people have. Without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to you guys for to introduce yourselves. There are some sort of topics that we've already outlined for discussion, but please do send questions in the Q&A, respond in the chat. If you've got burning questions about going freelance, or you're a freelancer and you feel like you're just kind of spinning in circles, I am in that club, then now is the time to get some answers. Without further ado, over to you guys.
Yeah, I'll start. My name's Simon. I've been freelance for almost 3 years, kind of at that point now. I work entirely with Adapt, which is a open source e-learning authoring tool, responsive authoring tool, fairly new, fairly custom, and I help my clients who are kind of teams of e-learning companies to use Adapt. So I talk about how what are we talking here, Viv? Are we talking about how we are past as well, or should we do that?
Let's give a bit of backstory. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So why did I go freelance? I started in the e-learning industry about 7, 8 years ago, and I was working at Kineo, who are, I'm sure many people have heard of it in the chat. They're like probably one of the largest e-learning agencies in the UK. And whilst I was there, I was kind of working with Adapt on a daily basis, and I was really enjoying using it and kind of wanted to do more with it. And from that, like I kind of realized I was like very specialized in it, and that led to me getting my second job at King's College London. So I moved to London and I was working there for a bit. And whilst I was there, I was like kind of the in-house expert, I guess, and I was doing lots of tasks like kind of training people and like creating themes and creating like stuff like that. All these like quite unique tasks that I realized that a lot of companies wanted access to, and like it kind of made me think more and more about like kind of, could this be like an ad hoc service that like someone could hire someone with these skill sets and then like bring them on for a short project to kind of help them out. So yeah, like whilst I was having these thoughts, like this company approached me about this job. They wanted to like me to move to, I think it was like Barcelona or something, and like they were like talking about all these different things, and I was like, okay, that sounds really cool, but like the job kind of fell through. But like instead I was like, how about this? Like, how about instead of you hiring me, like I could work freelance with you in my evenings and like off on weekends and stuff, and like I could help you with some of these like objectives that you're looking to do. So obviously I took them up on this. Well, I took them up on this offer, and unfortunately, that kind of thing like didn't really happen. But like I created the website, and I was like kind of ready to start. Like it really got like the cogs turning of like, I want to start freelancing. I want to start like helping people this way. And at that point, it was still very much like a part-time kind of thing. So that led to me setting up my company, setting up my website, and I was still at the job, but I got my first few clients eventually, and I was really happy with it, and very quickly had enough work from freelancing on the side to kind of replace my main income and kind of make it a full-time job. So after like 6 months of just doing that, I decided to hand my notice in at my job and go it alone. And it's obviously been a bit of a rough journey, and I'm not going to claim to be like a master and know everything, but obviously this is a panel, so I want to have a discussion, and I want to share my experiences about how I found my journey, I guess.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Simon. And without the memo, you went for the blue shirt with sports combo. So that's magnificent. So a little bit of background about who this Viv character is. I work as a learning designer and L&D consultant, specializing in things like performance consulting. And over the last 15 years or so, I've had a portfolio career. Simon, far better at being focused than me. But along the way, I've worked with many of the leading e-learning agencies as a learning designer, as well as doing portfolio career of doing some coaching, fronting some projects, and various interim roles. Along the way, I've also got involved with the e-learning network. So it would be rude of me not to plug their amazing mentoring scheme. And I've also had the privilege of judging the Learning Technologies Awards. Looking forward to your questions, and do stop us before we just waffle on for far too long, because we want to give you our insights. There's not a right way of becoming freelance. We have different approaches to different things, but I think what you should come out of this session with is some insights into some of the really practical concerns that a freelancer would have, and our approach for thinking through how to deal with them. So if you want to be popping your questions into chat.
Yeah, feel free to talk about absolutely anything at all. Business stuff like finding clients, fixed fee versus hourly rate, what your role is. We're happy to kind of have a discussion about it. Either use the chat or the QA, I guess.
And Jane has built on my plug for the e-learning network. Good work, Jane. Good to have you with us.
Okay, so we have our first question. How do you go about finding clients?
I think we've got two quite different approaches. So I think the one that I feel that I can talk about quite sensibly is the route of being referred via an e-learning agency. And so how did that happen in the first place? Networking with various agencies, getting to know people, doing a good job for the client, generally trying to be a nice person to be around, so that you maintain and deepen the relationships you have with various agencies. Most of the agencies I've worked long enough with for them to have changed their names 2 or 3 times. And so for me, it's about develop those relationships, do a good job, make the experience of working with you a great experience, and it's just becomes easy for them to come back to you. Simon, on the other hand.
Yeah, we prepared for the session before, and we talked about this question.
Sure.
And it's just all ad lib. So for me, the way I approached, obviously I'm kind of hyper niched. I'm very focused on a single technology, and my approach has been a very like people kind of come to me. Like I have a website and it's called Adapt Freelancer. So it is pretty much, I've had so many clients tell me like they type that into Google and like that exact phrase, and my company was obviously the result. And that's been obviously the way that I've found the best way to kind of find clients. I'd say about 90% of my clients I work with are from Google. The remainder are LinkedIn or occasionally referrals. But I'd say, yeah, about 80 to 90% Google and stuff. The rest is just do that. And I also work with global clients. Like instead of just being focused in the UK, I've worked with clients from the US, Canada, like Australia, New Zealand, Germany, maybe some others I can't remember at this point. But yeah, like for me, like maybe because of how my, how I'm structured and more focused on like kind of a niche, like it makes sense to kind of have a global focus, I'd say. Okay, so any other questions?
Oh, we've got some more coming in.
Do you guys want to use the Q&A feature rather than the chat? It might be a bit easier for us to read, and like people can upvote and stuff. So can you, for next future questions, can you use the Q&A feature rather than the chat feature? So Whitney Salas asked, what skills have been most beneficial being a freelancer? So video skills, consulting skills. Yeah, that one.
Okay, should we have a crack at that?
Yeah, I mean, should I start? Or?
Yeah, go for it, Simon.
I mean, obviously, being a freelancer, you have to do everything. That's like, well, you're responsible for a lot of stuff that you're not responsible for as an employee. So if you're an employee and you're hired as like a graphic artist or an instructional designer or a project manager, like obviously that's your remit and your employer is responsible for doing all those other tasks for you. But yeah, being a freelancer, obviously you have to be responsible for all these things like marketing, like bookkeeping, accounting, all these extra tasks like finding clients, like selling to clients, stuff like that. So the kind of thing that we've agreed on is do the stuff that you're really comfortable doing and then outsource anything that you're not comfortable doing with. So they've had a good example about being an accountant at a previous time. So he was happy to do that kind of accounting stuff himself. Whereas for me, like I don't have any experience and I hire an accountant to do my books because it's obviously something that would take me days to learn, and I'd rather spend that time, earning money rather than saving time. I guess. Using time, saving money, but using my time.
So I would say all of what Simon said, plus also a little bit of really understanding the business and the business problem that you're contributing to solving. Because in a employee role, particularly, or what you may find is that your role is about how do I make my boss look good? Whereas as a freelancer, you need to look a bit wider, bit deeper, and it's what's the real problem? What's the real issue here? And quite often, the issue that's presented to you as the one that your client wants solved isn't the real issue. It's an expression of what we can build. The business knows that there is a problem, but it's an expression of what we can build politically safe consensus around that is the problem. So often it will be that you need to dig a bit deeper and do some bits of performance consulting to actually get to the real issue. One other thing that I'd add to it is just stay curious. I've spent years making tons of mistakes and learning as I've gone along. I don't claim to be the finished article unless you're a client. So stay curious, keep learning. What have we got next?
So Morgan Hazard has asked, how do you calculate how much time you need for production? So like time management skills, like I guess, is that what you're trying to get to, Morgan? I mean, obviously, like calculate. I'd assume this is maybe for like fixed price projects. Can you just confirm that, if that's okay, Morgan?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay. Yes. Okay.
I'll sort of fill the airspace a little bit by by saying that if you're freelancing via an e-learning agency, they typically have quite standard metrics in terms of how long it takes to script X minutes of e-learning, how long it takes to develop a screen, whether it's simple, medium, complex. So with a lot of those, I would my experience is that those benchmarks are reasonably safe and tried and tested. When you're moving to something which is slightly more niche, then the reality is that you will probably get it wrong 2 or 3 times before you get it right. And one of my filthy habits from being an accountant is that I timesheet everything, and so that means that over time, if I am doing similar work over again, I get a better idea of how long it's going to take. But yeah, sometimes you get it wrong and it hurts. Sometimes you get it wonderfully right and you just think, oh wow, that last half hour I just got paid £500. How marvelous.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's definitely like, yeah, I and the time sheeting thing is something that I've always meant to do, but like I just end up forgetting about it, and then like, you know, sometimes tasks blend into another task, and it's quite hard to like say exactly what it is. But I definitely think it's quite, it takes time and experience. I think that's probably the easiest thing to say about like timing for production. Like, you're not going to get it right the first time. I remember the very first project I did, I think I charged like £2,000 to create like a e-learning module, and like it was hideous. I definitely like, you know, I worked so much for the client, and I think I had to ask them multiple times to like extend the budget a bit because it wasn't enough money for what they needed, and like yeah, I kind of got screwed over. But I mean, obviously that's a learning experience. Like, I'm glad I did that the one time so that I knew in the future, like, you know, make sure you have the information, make sure that you charge the right money, and that kind of thing won't happen again. So yeah, like it's mostly experience. And yeah, because you followed up by saying, how did you get hold of these standards? Yeah, I mean, I guess I think as an individual, you probably, I don't think, I've seen there's like some articles online about it, like how long it takes to like make an e-learning course, but it really depends. Like, I think there's so many variables, and like how skilled you are, like if the client's expecting a lot of amends, you know, the quality of the work, and like how much custom stuff there is. So I don't think either of us are going to be able to say right now, like a 1 hour e-learning module is going to take 200 hours to create or whatever, you know. Like, it's
you never know, because to an extent, at the point in the sales process where the client wants a fixed price for it, you don't actually know what the content is. You haven't actually done the performance consulting needs analysis to figure out what's important, what people actually care about. So, you know, it's the business model that most of the e-learning production industry operates on is frankly a bit flawed, because you're providing a fixed price when you don't actually know what you're quoting for. However, it's kind of the least worst business model that we found so far.
Sure. Yeah.
So Barry, I won't share the names of the various agencies that I've worked for, but you will be able to see most of them on the Fosway 9 grid.
Yeah, they're mostly the
and
UK.
that's quite a UK centric view of agencies. So you might have a very different sort of research report if you were, for instance, looking at the US.
Yeah, he says he's from the US, so I imagine there's other websites where you can just Google US e-learning agencies, and I think like elearningindustry.com is like I think they do a report every so often of like different agencies. So you could try that.
I imagine there's also a directory on ASTD. If we're talking stateside. Okay, Barry, how often do I find clients that allow you to work after hours?
It depends on the project, I guess. Again, and I think fixed hour projects, they're a lot less controlling of your time, so you're kind of happy to fixed rate projects. Sorry, they're more willing to kind of give you like 3 weeks and come back and you have the result done. So with those kind of projects, you can obviously work in your own hours and you can choose when you're working. I work with like global clients, and obviously they don't really care about the time zone, because of the time zone they don't really care about like when you work. It's kind of like they're expecting you to have it done. And if there's a rapid turnaround, I normally give them like a debrief at the start of the next day, or the end of the day, or something like that. So that would give me the flexibility to work on it when I want to, rather than during their office hours. I think that's kind of, and I definitely think as you become more experienced and more senior, like clients are more willing to kind of give you freedom to kind of do things in your own term, rather than being like kind of micromanaged and being micromanaged, I guess.
I mean, I think there's sort of almost a double reality here, which is, whilst you want to give your clients or the agency that you're working for the impression that this project is the most important thing ever in your life and your whole life has been leading up to this, they also know the reality is that you're handling many projects at once. So there have been occasions where I've been, say, juggling 15 different projects. Wouldn't recommend it. 5 is a far saner number than 15. But provided you're really clear about what the next steps are, when people can expect to get things from you, and you're reasonably responsive when they get in touch, then they can't expect to have bought all of your time, because you have other projects. The only time they can expect you to jump when they say jump is when they genuinely have bought all your time, because otherwise you're not going to get paid for sitting around.
Yeah. Should we move on to the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, so what are some tips on marketing or selling to clients you need to conduct? What are some tips on marketing or selling to the client you need to conduct a performance needs analysis when they think that they know the solution is?
So I'll go with this.
Yeah, go on.
I think the first bit of the conversation requires a little bit bravery, but you're not there to take instructions. They've brought you in to be an expert. So as an expert, it's entirely reasonable for you to ask questions. So very much along the lines of, so that I can really understand the problem that I'm solving for, what are the kind of conversations that you've had that have got you to where you are now? And just keep asking loads of questions, because that will give you the opportunity to sort of say, so what I'm hearing is the problem in particular is this. One of the ways of solving that would be to do this other thing. Have you considered that? Would you like to consider that? So I think where it gets particularly challenging is where you've got somebody who's got a very fixed idea of this is the problem. They're in a hurry, and they're wanting to get you just to do the work. Um,
Mhm.
those are clients that you let someone else do, and focus on the clients that are the ones that you enjoy working with personally, doing the kind of things that you want to be doing, because that way you're going to do your best work, and they're going to either give you repeat business or refer you.
Sure. I don't know if this question is kind of to do with like strategy and like how do you sell the idea of like, you know, so imagine that you have a business who's like, we need to teach our staff about like fire safety or something like that, like, and they might not necessarily know the right approach and stuff. Is this question about like that kind of stage of the like strategy and like the very initial analysis needs, I guess? Is that kind of how I'm approaching it? Is that, am I interpreting it correctly, or is it, you think it's something else?
That's kind of what I think.
Okay, yeah.
Um,
So
I'm,
I know a few freelancers. I think Christy Taylor, like there's a freelancer who she has this like she creates like a document which is like kind of a strategy of like tells it how they should do their thing, and like I think she charges like $1,000 for it. Oh, she answered it. Okay. If they've answered it, I like the idea they're stuck on the solution. So if they're stuck, you don't want to help them, but you can sell strategy. Like obviously, it's something that can be done. Yeah. So we'll move on.
okay. Should we go for Ger's question next? Where do you find the time to keep up to date with accessibility, responsive design, and how to let the client pay for that?
Yeah, I guess this is part of being a business. Is obviously like you kind of have to budget time to learn. Like, you know, it's up to you to like kind of charge enough on projects to kind of have the leeway to do your training and do other stuff which would normally be covered by your employer. So yeah, this is, I mean, obviously it's good if you can also do projects which are like aligning with these new things, and aligning, like if a client is like, we want to do something super cool, and they might have the budget to like allow you to kind of learn as you're doing. Like I recently did a project for a client, and they wanted to do like these like scrolling animations as you go down the page, and I said to them like, I don't know how to do this already. Like I could probably spend half a day learning and do it, and that's kind of what happened. So like you have to have a budget to kind of allocate to new stuff. Like clients who are looking for the new stuff, or like looking to do really cool stuff, or like learn accessibility and stuff like that, like they should probably have the budget to do those things for particular projects. But yeah, in general, I think like for learning new trends, if you need to do it yourself, you need to like have enough income from your paid projects to kind of cover that expense of like learning new stuff. For example, we're both appearing on this like panel. This isn't making us any money, but we're doing it because it's like obviously good for like developing our skills and obviously networking and etc.
Yeah, and I think on the point of networking, I would also say that, you know, if I've got a question about accessibility, then from my network there'd be 2 or 3 people that I could call up and ask, and the same with responsive design. So just keep networking, keep curious, talk to other people who know stuff. You know, if nothing else from today's session, I've found Simon for all of my future adapt questions.
Likewise. Thank you.
Okay, Chuck's got a question.
Yeah. And Chuck is he's my co-host of my podcast as well. So shout out to the Adaptives podcast and also the Adaptives website, which is our website we've created together. So hi, Chuck.
Okay, so I think part of this, I would say, or my viewpoint on this is that the most challenging thing to do is to actually get the work in the first place, because you're new to freelancing, you don't have the track record, and what you're going to find is that over time your offer is going to iterate. So although it would be really tempting to procrastinate a bit and spend days researching all the legal stuff and having that all in a row before you started, I would incline myself a bit more towards the get into it, find out what you need, and particularly if you're doing work for an e-learning agency, they will have a standard contract, which, whilst there's a few bits in it you could quibble with, is broadly going to be pretty sensible, and it's going to say, we expect you to have this kind of insurance, and you go, okay, well, I better get that then. A lot of it's fairly standard. Simon, what would you like to add?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you where I don't think you should build it. I think you should definitely build out as you go. Like I said, I kind of fell into freelancing by accident. It was something that I was just planning on doing for like a few hours a month kind of thing. And eventually like it just kind of grew and grew, and I decided to make it a full-time thing. When I started, I was a sole trader because it was the easiest thing to set up. And now I became, after I decided to make it full-time, I became a limited company because obviously you have more control and you have less liability personally for certain stuff. So yeah, like I think it's definitely a kind of thing of as problems come up, like kind of address them. I think there's a quote by Richard Branson which is like, I accept a project and then like kind of learn how to do it. And it sounds quite reckless, I guess, but I definitely think like if something excites you, like do the thing, make sure you get it first, and then you can kind of go from there and like, you know, work out how to implement it, I guess. Yeah.
Cool.
So should do Barry's or should do
yeah, should we do Barry's? Yeah.
Okay. To start, how important do you find an online portfolio to be?
Okay.
Again,
go Simon.
again, this depends on your approach and like how you're finding your clients. For me, it's extremely important. I get, like I said, 90% of my work through my website. People go on Google, find my website, and then contact me. So for me, it's extremely important. But I imagine for you is probably less, I guess.
Yeah. I've always sort of sold through relationships. I mean, there's a website, there's a blog, there's LinkedIn, but ultimately that's there to support the relationships. And I'm going to say the gloriously unorthodox. I don't have an online portfolio. I never have. 15 years later, money comes in.
And I interpreted this as portfolio being a website, but yeah, you're right. Portfolio being like a showcase of your projects and stuff. And again, I don't publicly show that. A lot of the projects I do obviously are heavily under NDA, and you know, I can't really just like if a client pays me a lot of money to help create a course, I'm not gonna like upload it on my own website and take claim of it. Yeah, I mean, I have a few examples which I'm happy to show clients if they email me and we have a conversation, but I don't publicly show them.
And what I do publicly show are case studies, which take the story of a project and ideally have client testimonials and that kind of thing on. But as Simon says, a lot of what we do is under NDA, and you're also doing it as part of a team. So To me, it's a little bit disingenuous to show this wonderfully looking screen when actually 70% of what made it wonderful was the graphics designer.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, and yeah, I again, having a client testimonial is extremely important. As soon as you get your first clients, you should kind of reach out to them, say like, do you mind telling people about the project I was working on and how I helped and that kind of stuff. And I've got a dozen or so testimonials on my website, and obviously it shows authority. It shows I can be trusted. It shows that the kind of clients that I work with. Extremely important. Cool. On average, on an average each week. So on an average week, how much time do you spend working on a project versus getting new projects? So like this would be like marketing and like kind of finding clients, admin stuff. Yeah. For me, I'd say it's about 80-20 maybe. Obviously, like I'm currently working on Adaptips, the second plug of today, which is a website to help people kind of use Adapt and kind of encourage, people to like make it easier to use. And obviously that's not a money-making project. That's obviously a combination of a passion project and also hopefully a marketing exercise as well. I don't have any idea when that will ever be, if that will be a return investment, but it's kind of a risk I'm willing to make, I guess. For most people who are like, how much do you spend? I'll hand over to you. How much do you spend?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would say I'm chargeable somewhere between 70 and 85% of the time. And it kind of depends on the work that I'm doing. Because if I'm doing big lumpy projects for an e-learning agency, then I don't need to spend much time doing marketing and the admin. I'm just doing the work. Whereas if I'm going after higher margin work where I'm fronting my own projects, that just takes a whole lot more marketing. And so it's quite sort of dynamic according to the types of business that are on my books and the types of business that I'd like to bring in.
Yeah. And to be honest, 80%, I said 80%, I think that is quite high. Maybe it's probably about 60 to 70, I think. So yeah, like don't expect people, like I think a lot of people look at freelancing and they assume it's like they do the same thing, but they get paid more or they can work with different companies. And in some extent it is that, but like obviously because you're doing all this selling side and the marketing side, like you have to be focused on those things as well. So
you definitely need to do the sums to say if I'm chargeable 70% of the time and this is the day rate that I think I can offer, does that give me the kind of money that I need or want? Because if you're assuming that you're going to be chargeable 120% of the time, you're not, and you're going to way underprice yourself. You actually need to price yourself so that you've got time to do the marketing. And yes, Kimberly, maybe get some client testimonials.
This is kind of following on.
Aim to get feedback every time. I suspect I could be a bit more systematic about it than I am. But I think that broadly, you've got two clients in an agency situation. You've got the sort of project manager, account manager within the agency, and then the ultimate client. And in a good job, you've made them all happy and you've impressed them. But the more interesting thing is being brutal about it. It's the agency client that's actually more important than the end client. Because if you've got a relationship with the agency, they'll keep bringing you back. And if the end client is a bit unhappy, there may well be circumstances that are entirely beyond your control or the agency's control that are manifesting themselves as unhappy client behavior. So, obviously you do your best, but if there was if I had the choice of one to be happy, one to be not, it'd be the agency, because that's where your future work's coming from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And in terms of like how you reach out to them, what I personally do is I say, thanks again for working with me. I really enjoyed the project. I normally say, like, I'm a small business, and I'm looking to get more referrals so that I can bring in new business. Would you mind if I write a testimonial about the project, and I'll explain what I did and like how I helped your team, and then I'll send it over to you to review. And if you like it, then obviously, if you'd like it, I'd like to publish it. If you want to make changes or there's something you don't agree with, then obviously you can do that. And I tell them I'm never going to publish anything unless you give me the permission to do so. And obviously that builds the trust. I'll put in the chat my testimonial page so you can see it for yourself. So yeah, just like those are the kind of testimonials I have. These are all things that I write myself and then I give to the client to review. So that's in the chat if you want to see that. Should we move on to the next question?
Yeah.
So Kimberly had the question about healthcare, very American focused. It's a very USA focused question.
Yeah.
In the UK, obviously we have the NHS, so we don't really care. It's not really a concern, but obviously, should we talk about the US perspective or?
Well, what I would say in the old world, probably biggest expense would be traveling to go see clients and sort of the occasional lunch here or there, or maybe accountancy fees. I'm not sure which.
Yeah.
But broadly, there's not a huge amount of cost. I mean, some of the software licenses can be a bit punchy if that's something that you need to do.
Yeah. Like hardware, obviously. I mostly work from home. Occasionally, I do co-working spaces. And they could be a couple of £100 a month. I think it's. I don't think I spend more than 3,000 to 4,000 a year. Probably. I don't know. Even that seems quite high. I don't know. Because I have my accountant. I pay about £100 a month for an accountant, so that's probably my biggest recurring expense, I think. Accountants, and obviously in the US, healthcare's expensive. Is there any more questions we missed? In the chat, maybe? For Articulate and other software, do you buy your own versions and charge the client, or does the client pay you for the licenses? Should I copy that? Tom, I'll copy that into the QA. Oh, there we are. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, cool.
Well, for me, I've always paid for it myself. The relationship I have with my clients, I don't let them worry about that. I just do it myself. I mostly work with open source software. I actually did pay for Adobe today, so this is quite a good question. But yeah, like if they're providing you the hardware, you'd probably assume there'd be. Is that what you would say, Viv? Like if they're providing,
So I mean, most of the work that I do doesn't actually involve particularly significant software. It's kind of I pay for my suite of Microsoft stuff. But some of the longer term contracts that I've done with clients, they actually provide a laptop because it's just a nightmare to get into their system and their security unless you have a dedicated laptop.
Yeah, that's.
Cool. Right, so we have lots of people coming to the UK because that's the fun freelancing place to be.
I guess this is like something that you know, a lot of these experienced people have said different things, and like that shows that freelancing is ultimately like it's very unique by its definition. Like you're a solo person, and the way one person does it could be entirely different to how someone else does it. Like me and Viv obviously we've said several times that they have different approaches towards different things, and like you know, it's about kind of making that step and then kind of learning what works for you and works for your clients and how you operate. And like you know, I've seen different freelancers do different things. As well as like freelance, I also have like a hosting service which I offer, which I host adapt for teams so that they can use them. And you know, it's something that is more of a service than it's more of a product than a service, I guess. It's something which they kind of pay a monthly fee for or a yearly fee for, and it's basically me providing an offering to myself. But it's a service which I used to do as a freelancer, and I looked at it and I was like, you know, this doesn't really make sense. The way that clients are like approaching me and they're like the purchasing decision, like I should just have a dedicated website which offers this product and they can kind of just purchase it there, and I do the thing in the background that gets it set up for them. And then, yeah. So like, I think it's about being quite creative and quite being able to look at your like value proposition and what you do and like kind of look at, yeah, like, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
I keep on waffling. I'm sorry.
I think we're running out of questions. So perhaps we should threaten to sing. No, we shouldn't.
Kimberly, how many? You said that you freelance whilst working full time. Like, how many hours do you do? Like, do you find it's quite stressful? Like, do you think it impacts your either professional life or your personal life? Like, because I remember when I started and I was freelancing on the side, I was working like 50, 60-hour weeks at some points, and obviously maybe that's more common in the US, but I was very like, I noticed it was affecting my mental health and it was affecting other areas. So like, I think as a freelancer, you have to be very disciplined and very much able to draw the line and say like, this is too much work for me. This is, you know, I can't handle this. And to be able to turn down work is obviously, it's very scary because you don't know when the next project might come in, but sometimes if something doesn't feel right or for whatever reason, you need to learn to say no, I think.
People will ask you again, particularly if you're very sort of transparent in saying, you know, so that I can do a good job for you, I need to have this much time available. I think realistically at the moment I've got 30% of that. If you're truly desperate and can't find someone else in the world, come back and talk to me. But for now, I'd like to say no and wish you every success finding someone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I've referred projects when I've been busy or like a project doesn't sound right to me. Then I'm usually happy to just refer someone else, and you know, it makes the client happy. They're willing to come back to me if they have the work that I am looking to do. Obviously, it builds a relationship with another freelancer. This is kind of leading on to another question about hiring your own freelancers for a project. Yeah, like obviously, I've had projects where I've hired graphic artists. You know, the client wants something which I can't deliver on my own, so I bring in graphic artists, I bring in instructional designers, and they help me deliver the project more of an agency rather than as a freelancer. I personally I used to do that more, but I've kind of moved away from that because I don't really enjoy managing people. Like I find I'm kind of like having to be a project manager as well. I'm having to like keep up with every stage of the development journey and like do all these tasks. And it's something that I've kind of learned to say no to and kind of turned away from. But exactly,
yeah. I mean, I've hired freelance developers in the past, where I've had projects, and yeah, that works. That works pretty well. But that's not the type of work that I've most actively pursued. Maybe slightly different reasons for Simon, but I would definitely echo that one of you end up being the project manager, which sure I can do, but it's not something which gets me out of bed in the morning. And ultimately, as a freelancer, you're making lots of individual choices about what it is that you really want to do and how to run that show. Well, if that doesn't get you out of bed in the morning, then nothing will.
Yeah. How much time do we have left, Tom? Is like one more question or?
Yeah. We can do some more. I think the only two that are left in there that I can see are how many projects do you average in a year, and are you able to share that? And one very adapt specific one saying, will adapt ever get an installer?
Well, I'll answer the latter first. If you go to adaptunlimited.net, it's that's the installer for you. That's my service right there. Full disclosure. But there's a 14-day free trial, so you can, if you want to try Adapt, then obviously you can use that, and you'll get to see it yourself.
And also, it's not that
it's open source as well. And yeah, Tom, you've done the video on how to install Adapt, which so obviously watch Tom's video on it's on on your IDTX YouTube channel. So
it is, yeah. But even without that, I mean, the Git is, if you just work through it logically, it's not normal, I get it, to install from command prompt these days, but you'll be fine. You might even feel better afterwards and switch to a proper operating system like Linux or something. It gets catchy after a while. Once you've installed something, you're like, oh, what else can I do? Clearly not many Linux fans in the house. That's fine. I'll go away again.
Go back to your cave.
Absolutely. Yeah, we group together in the darkness and keep warm by the fire. One day we'll have a pre-made device that comes with it pre-installed, but not today.
I thought Dell does laptops that do Linux install.
Yeah, but then you've got a Dell. Yeah. I'd rather just not have a computer. Anyway, let's move on, because that's not what this is about. How many projects do you guys do in a year then, I guess, if that's information you want to share, because I know everyone's got a different view on what they share and don't about their business?
Okay. I wouldn't have a problem sharing it if I actually knew the answer, because every year it's different. So, for instance, some of the chunkier projects that I've done have been, maybe 4 days a week for 4 months. And, that's sort of quite big strategic change that you're supporting, through to being engaged to script a 2-minute animation, which kind of a day of work, half a day for edits, job done. So it's kind of it's quite sort of how long is a piece of string?
Yeah, for me, like I don't know what a project is. Sometimes a project is like obviously a few hours work. Sometimes it could be like months recurring. I think I average sending an invoice about once a week, and that's like, sometimes that's an ongoing project, sometimes that's a brand new project, sometimes it's like a 50% payment upfront, stuff like that. So like it's very it's very like kind of fluctuating, and yeah, I if I was to guess, maybe about 15, 20, but again, like different, yeah, I don't know. That's a very rough guess. Cool. Is there no more questions in the QA? I think we're all done. I've been trying to follow it. Oh, hang on. So Tom asked, after creation, a product is there earning. Wait, am I reading this wrong, or is it not?
So this is a question from the chat I've just copied across. So I think what it's asking is there an earning to be made in sort of doing ongoing maintenance and updating of work for clients once you've actually delivered the initial project?
Yeah. So for me, so I have projects where I'm like creating a plugin or doing something quite bespoke for a customer, and I usually like to include in the offering, in the like fixed fee offering, like a 3-month guarantee where I'd say like, hey, if there's a bug in it, then I'm going to fix that for free as part of my service for an ID after creation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise you're going to have to kind of negotiate that. If you're working for an agency, the agency's probably going to like ask for the client to pay. I remember Kineo, every so often they would like, the client wants to change the logo, and like they paid like £400 to like copy and paste a logo somewhere else, and like I don't know, like stuff like that. It's obviously like, it depends. Either you could do a kind of, if you're doing more hourly rate stuff, then obviously you charge for that. Or if you're doing for like fixed fee stuff, maybe you could offer like a bug fix guarantee or ongoing support guarantee if the client is interested in that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it sort of comes down to what level of change is foreseeable.
Yeah.
So, if we know that there are going to be a bunch of changes and we've got quite good visibility of that, then wrap that into the original agreement if you can. But in most other circumstances, I would contract it as a separate arrangement.
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. Right. Well, we've gone a few minutes over, but I think it was good to cover those last couple of questions, actually. So I want to say thank you ever so much to both of you. This has been so interesting. It's to people with quite different experiences, different ways of running their businesses. So I think really helpful to hear that from other people. I've certainly got a lot to maybe go and think, maybe I should give that some more thought. Particularly about
James said something quite interesting about handing over source files, and like that's something I always do as well. Like I personally just like to be able to say to the client, like, I don't want to control your project. Like, you hired me to do this. Like, I'm not gonna hide the source files away and say like, you have to come via me. So yeah, I agree. That's probably something you should do. Good job, King.
100%. Awesome. Right. Well, I shall let both you gentlemen go and have a nice evening. Thank you ever so much for appearing at the conference. Make sure you share some details in the chat about where people can connect with you, and where, of course, they can download your Adapt installer.
Awesome. I'll have an Adapt installer ready for you on Monday, which
this is it. Now we know the business model's profitable. We're all going to that. Awesome. Well, thank you both. We'll be back shortly with our last session of the day, conveniently on carving out your own ID career.
Woohoo! Thanks so much, guys. It's been really, really interesting to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks again. And yeah,
thanks,
see you
Tom.
in the chat.
Bye.
Thanks, Tom.
Yes.